Hello everyone! Welcome to another episode of Science Lecture video series with Sir Geronimo. Let's get started.
Good day! In this video, we are going to learn about the abiotic components of the ecosystem. In the last video, we talked about the biotic components of an ecosystem, which are the living organisms present in an ecosystem. Now, let us define what is a biotic component or a biotic factor. Abiotic components include all the non-living things in the environment, and they may affect also the biotic factors. So when we recall the definition of an ecosystem is an area where there is an interaction of living and non-living things. Thus, a biotic factor or component is composed of all the non-living things that is present in the environment, and they may also affect the biotic factors or the living organisms. There are three major factors when we talk about abiotic components. We have the climate, the soil, and the topography. Let us describe each of them in the succeeding slides. Number 1. Climate. Now, there are climatic factors that have a significant effect in an ecosystem, particularly in the living organisms present in that ecosystem. This includes the following: the light, water, temperature, and air. Let us now discover the importance of each climatic factors in the activities of different living organisms found in an ecosystem, because all of them are important for us to live continuously and for us to survive. First, light. Light, as we talked about last time, is very essential for photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the food production by plants and other photosynthetic organisms such as bacteria and algae. So, it is essential for photosynthesis for them to make their own food for them to survive. Now, we can say that plants which are directly exposed to sunlight have a higher rate of photosynthesis as compared to plants which are not exposed very enough. Another function or another importance of light is its length during the daytime. The amount of light being given off by the sunlight during daytime. Now, the leaf fall is influenced by the amount of light being exposed or being present in the environment. More so, nesting of the birds and other living organisms are also influenced by the presence of light, as well as the migration, and lastly, hibernation. Next, let us talk about the temperature. The temperature is also a climatic factor that influences the activities done by the organisms, and they are dependent on the temperature. There are some organisms that are highly dependent on temperatures, such as in the picture shown on your screen. So there are different kinds of organisms such as strawberries, which need low temperature for them to strive or for them to germinate. Because if you plant strawberries in an area or an environment where there are records of high temperature, they cannot germinate or they cannot live. Therefore, they are temperature sensitive, meaning to say a change in temperature may affect their germination. Another example is this one, cacti or the cactus. So we can usually see cactus or cacti in a dry environment accompanied by a very high temperature, particularly desert. So these are said to be succulents because they have water content, more water content as compared to other normal plants inside their body. So even though there is no presence of water around the area, they can still survive the high temperature because they have higher amount of water inside them. And also, the temperature affects the rate of hibernation of different organisms. So when we say hibernation, the resting of the organisms during cold seasons or having a very low temperature. Next, let's talk about the air. Now, in the planet Earth, we have the different components. So we have the hydrosphere, and we also have the atmosphere. And living organisms depend on the atmospheric gases found in the air. And we can say that accordingly, 78% of the atmospheric gas is nitrogen, which is a component of many organic molecules such as proteins. Another component of air is oxygen, which makes up the 21% of the total composition of atmospheric gases. And they make the living organisms such as humans do the everyday activities because we need oxygen for us to survive, and also by our cells for them to do our daily processes or life processes. And 0.03% of the total atmospheric gas is carbon dioxide, which is very important for photosynthesis of plants and other photosynthetic organisms. If you will recall, when we discussed about photosynthesis, aside from water as a raw material, plants also need carbon dioxide to produce their own food. Next, water. Water are essential for plants because they are also a raw material to do their own food. So producers such as plants need water for making food through the process of photosynthesis. Animals, on the other hand, drink water to survive. Now, the amount of rainfall determines the type of vegetation in an area. In an instance, in this picture, this is a tropical rainforest. The amount of rainfall in tropical rainforest is very high. Therefore, the amount of water present is high also, giving the chance for the plants to propagate rapidly, aside from those areas which lacks water, such as in desert. So when you are in a desert region, you cannot see more plants as compared to tropical rainforest, which you can see or you can observe many variety of plants because the amount of water present there is very high. So that is how important water is, not just for drinking, not just for photosynthesis, but also for reproduction as well. Now, let us talk about another factor of the abiotic component, which is the soil. Soil provides the substrate for the growth of some organisms such as plants. So it also serves as the anchorage. Doon kumakabit or doon kumakapit yung mga plants for them to not be carried away by the water kung meron mang flood. So, they are being influenced or they influence they determine the following. So the amount of minerals present determines the kind of plants that can vegetate in that particular area, and also the nutrients present in the soil. They also include the moisture or the water holding capacity of the soil, which is also essential for the propagation of plants, and also the acidity, which influences the vegetation and growth of some organisms. So that is the importance of soil, and it is considered as a abiotic component. And lastly, topography. Topography determines the communities found in an ecosystem through the following aspects. So there are different types of topography, there are different levels of topography, and they are determined or influenced by the following. Number 1, altitude. So areas that are found in higher altitude, such as in mountains and other places that are said to be high in altitude, tend to have organisms that can be found only in that area but cannot be found in lower altitude areas. So if you can still remember in the news, where here in the Philippines, there was a mossy forest. A forest composed of many different kinds of moss, and they are located in higher altitude mountains of Cagayan. Now, in terms of angle of slope and orientation, the organisms are being influenced by topography in a way that such mountains, as seen in this picture, faces directly in the sunlight. So there are some parts of the mountain that are facing directly on the sunlight, which gives them the opportunity to have more plants on them because they are directly exposed to sunlight. While on the other hand, the other part of the mountain, which is not that merely exposed to sunlight, imposes lacking of different plants living in that part because they are not exposed very well in sunlight. So therefore, the orientation and the angle of slope determines also the vegetation and the propagation of different organisms such as plants residing in that area. So topography. So again, abiotic factors are the non-living things found in the ecosystem, and they may affect the biotic factors, because in an ecosystem there is an interaction of living and non-living, and they are always interacting with each other. A living organism cannot live without non-living things or the abiotic components. Okay, so we have the climate, the soil, and topography, and those are the three major functions or the major factors found or under the abiotic components. Thank you very much for listening, and see you on the next video.